Now what we're about to do is we're going to be showing you a slide presentation. I'm going to be asking Adam some questions as we move through this collaboratively, and then you guys have homework. We want you to discuss a topic, and there's two potentials, and you're going to have to pick one of them. So this is our study on employment cost of a bad reputation. We do this every year. We've done it for the past 3 years. This study is made possible through the support of Alexander Mann Solutions, where Adam leads this practice. So it's very useful in their business as well. We study about 1,010 people. 54% of them are employed, 13% are unemployed. And that number is probably closer to reality than what you hear on the news, okay, which is a somewhat cooked and adjusted number. But there's 13% that are working part-time, and you'll see the balance, students, whatever. If you think about it, if your company has a scandal, what we can already tell you from the last 2 years is your recruiting expenses will increase because you'll have a much harder time getting people to accept jobs. But even that, millions of dollars of escalation of cost is nothing compared to what you're about to see that impacts your salaries for as much as 5 years, because that's about how long an average person stays at a job after you go through a scandal. So you have an escalation in your salary expenses that literally is in the billions. So here's the demographic. 55% were full or part-time, 13% unemployed, and then retirees, students, homemakers, et cetera. This is, by the way, very good demographic across what is the current US economy where we did the study. We asked folks what types of behavior is most harmful to the company's culture and reputation. And number one, criminal acts, okay? But failure to recall defective products, we've heard about that recently. And then ironically, number three is workplace issue, discrimination in the workplace. And the last one is environmental. So the likelihood of accepting a job if you were offered it by a company with a bad reputation. 76 people say it's unlikely in 2014 versus 71% in 2013. Okay, so that trend is actually rising. Now, do I believe that somebody who is unemployed will turn a job down if the company has a bad reputation? I don't. But I do believe they will do everything they can to find a job with someone else. So let me ask Adam, if the company has a scandal, what are the things that you would recommend from Alexander Mann Solutions to ensure that they somehow ameliorate it or manage that? How do they get their story out there to make sure that future employees don't say, I'm not taking the job?
Yeah, look, I think Elliot, the big thing here is I think there's a limitation to what you can do to immediately affect consumer and sort of public perception of your brand. But I do think there's a lot you can do the level below that, which is where you're actually speaking to prospective candidates for your organization. And I think what organizations struggle to do sometimes, because it's hard work, is actually make sure they've trained their employees internally, but also their recruitment people to make sure that the conversations they're having with prospective candidates are on brand and they're consistent and they're telling a positive story. If you can drive that through the organization, it really helps as much as you possibly can. I think also it's a matter of making sure that you are sending positive communications to your talent pool as well. So those people who have expressed interest in working for you, making sure that you are communicating about the great positive things you are doing as an organization. But admittedly, obviously it's very difficult to go out there at the very front foot and actually put believable sort of messages out there to the marketplace. I think you need to be speaking to prospective candidates consistently.
So many of you are communication professionals. When there's a scandal, you get called in, what do we do? All right. You have to think about all the constituencies. This is one of the most important. This may have as big an impact, and it has frankly a much longer term impact on your bottom line than what you might experience in product sales hits. So let's move on and look at some other stuff. What percentage pay increase would a company with a bad reputation have to give you in order to accept? 48% say, I need over 50%. 30% said, forget it, I'm not interested. Now, companies don't pay over 50% increases, okay? Now, if any of you do know of a company that will pay someone a 50% increase, please give me that name during the break, okay? Because I'd love to apply, all right? No, people don't do that, they don't get it. 78% of the market locked out. Think about how small it is and how much harder you have to work to fill your jobs. What percentage pay increase would a company with an excellent reputation have to give you? Well, here we see that it's only 45% would say up to 20%, which is the range that most raises are in. Okay, and 7% are saying, no, I wouldn't accept a job with a company with a good reputation, they're just not going to be open to it. That's versus 30% on the prior slide. So, you know, Adam, how does a company with a good reputation make sure that they're getting that message forward to their town?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think a couple of examples there. One of our clients is a global investment bank, and they have had a criminal case here in the US, and they're hiring a lot of risk employees at the moment. And the interesting thing post the case wasn't the fact that less people were applying to work for them in risk jobs. Actually, lots of good people were applying to work for them, but they were demanding massive salary increases because they obviously saw the challenge of working for that organization, and the organization simply couldn't afford to do that. Another example is a client that I used to work with, part of the Virgin Group of Airlines. Famously, Virgin has great employee engagement. They're a good company. They do great CSR initiatives, but they actually have lower salary costs than most other airlines globally. They don't have to pay as much as other airlines have to do globally, and people actively want to work for them. So I think great examples of doing so.
All right, so the brand works, and the other thing that I really respect about Virgin is they have a bar in first class. You just got to love that. Or they call it upper class. So,
some of us don't get to fly in first class, Elliot, unfortunately. Yeah.
All right, well, if you do, I won't tell you. Your CEO will be here tomorrow. I won't tell her. So now let's look at one of the really interesting things, which let's break down the demography a little bit. And we're about to enter a region where we may need your help because we know what the numbers are, but we don't know why. Okay? So the first one is, would not take the job segmented by gender. Men are from Mars and women are from Venus. 24% of men versus 37% of women. Women are much more sensitive to corporate responsibility and ethics than men are. Now, one of our employees told me earlier, well, men are like cavemen, so what do you expect? I mean, but the truth is, much more sensitive. Now, when you're communicating to the different gender groups, do you recommend that companies use different messaging, or they message to both groups the same way?
No, I mean, it's a time bomb to segment it, I think. But I think it's more a matter of things like when we're communicating, gender diversity within organizations, we focus on things like flexibility, for example, for women, rather than actually speaking about women in their own right, I think, which is the key thing. But I think one of the examples we also have with a client of ours is another banking client who they do a lot of really good work to increase gender diversity in their organization. They do loads of events, they do loads of sponsorship as well. They also manage their supply chain very well. So all the recruiting organizations who work for them, they mandate the numbers that they need to come through. Problem is, they've had one gender diversity case in the US where they lost, and that gender diversity case has had a massive impact. So no matter how hard they work, that one case has had a massive impact on their ability to actually increase the number of, especially senior women who work for their organization.
Very good point. So we're going to come back to discussing this thing about men versus women. Just out of curiosity, by show of hands, and the lights are in my face, so I may not be able to say, how many people are surprised by this? Interesting. Okay. All right, so people do know why. All right, let's take a look segmented by age. And this is surprising. And this, by the way, this is 3 years we've seen this trend. This is the first year we're revealing it. We wanted to make sure it wasn't an anomaly. Younger workers, 18 to 34-year-olds. These are supposedly the idealists. These are the young people, the millennials, the occupy your dining room crowd, okay? This group, 21% say, I want to take the job. If you move to the middle class, the middle age group rather, the middle-aged and up, okay, which is sort of like me, that group is more concerned about corporate ethics. And there's potentially some reasons why. I mean, I've talked to some HR experts about this. Maybe young people are more desperate to get jobs. Maybe the young people are cynical. Maybe they're not idealistic. Maybe we've got a generation of cynics coming up. The other possibility is maybe tenures, which have shrunk dramatically. Tenures are dramatically down, the year to a year and a half for new graduates. They figure I'm going to work there for a year, I really don't care. Okay, how many people are surprised by this? Well, not that many of you. Okay, I was surprised by it. It is not what I would have expected. All right, would not take the job segmented by household income. This was interesting as well. Okay, middle class, more sensitive to it than the affluent, who you would typically think have more choices. Okay, so very, very interesting data around this, if you will. Now, Adam, just going back to this one slide on age. I know there's a lot of talk about communicating with millennials and recruiting millennials into the workforce. How do you segment your message based on sort of generational cohorts? And are you surprised by this?
Yeah, incredibly surprised. I mean, any research or anything we've learned in terms of communicating to graduates, which has always been that corporate social responsibility, environmental sensitivity are all very, very important things. So yeah, I'm completely surprised by this, to be perfectly honest with you. And we have had, when graduates start within organisations, quite often they're actually asked these questions and asked why they stay, and quite often it's the opposite. So I am surprised, but I do believe, Elliot, that it is probably something to do with the tenure piece. I think there's a lot of graduates who will take their first job for a couple of years just to get the experience and just to get themselves on the rank. But yeah, very surprising.
So it's very interesting. When we do studies, if we ask people who are in the different demographics, is social responsibility important to you? What do you think we get as the answer? Everyone says yes. When we ask, would you turn a job down with a company with a bad reputation, we're looking at 20 to 40%. So a lot of times, if those of you who spend a lot of time in doing surveys, and I've been in the survey industry for many, many years, how you ask the question is very important, but we were surprised by this, as was Adam. So as we look forward, this is sort of the summary. So prospective employees twice as likely to accept an offer of 20% increase. 48% plus, looking for over 50%, 30%, reject the offer summarily. That's 78% out of reach. The middle income workers are more sensitive than affluent, women more sensitive than men, middle age more sensitive than young workers. The one thing that remains very static year after year is that prospective employees in this year were 4.5 times more likely to refuse to consider an offer from a company with a bad reputation. Okay, so now this is the part where we need your help. We're going to do some crowdsourced research right now, okay? And the people who are at this conference, all right, I want everyone to have a table leader to get into a discussion. I'm going to give you the choice. You can debate the why, all right? So the first topic we could do is, why are women more sensitive than men? Or the second one is, right.
How long have we got?
I think that could be an interesting battle of the sexes right here, right now. Where's Billie Jean King when you need her? Okay, so the gender diversity in that respect, women versus men. Second one is age. Why are young people less sensitive than middle-aged people? Okay, so by show of hands, how many people want to do? And I need to do this to see you. Yeah. How many people want to do the one on gender? Have that debate.
We need at least one table, I think, probably.
No. We're all doing the same topic, yeah. So you get to vote. Gender? No, we're all going to do the same thing. All right. How many people want to do the one on age? Why are young people more sensitive than older workers? Raise your hand if you want to talk about age. All right. Cool. We're doing age. You gutless wimps. All right. So what we need is a table leader. You have about 15 minutes to have this discussion. When you're done, I want you to try to boil it down to a couple of sentences, what your table thinks are the reasons. Okay, I've suggested a couple of them, but go forth and figure out yourself if there are other ones that you think are possible. Have that discussion, get to know each other, and then the table leader, I want you to email your findings and just say, employment reputation study, okay, from Commit. That's it. That email goes to research@sharedexpertise.com. So research, R-E-S-E-A-C-R-H, right? At shared expertise, SHAREDXPERTISE.com. We want to see what each table thinks. We're going to pull this together and put together a white paper based on what 350 CR professionals think is the reason. Why are young people less sensitive than older workers? All right, so let's now get some table leaders. Let's hear what you have to say. We still want you to email it. Where is Larry Bassinet? Show yourself. Larry is our VP of Research. If you think this study was done wrong, get him in the hallway, just beat the tar out of him verbally, okay? So, please email your responses. Research@sharedexpertise.com. That goes to Larry and his department, along with offers for Bed Bath & Beyond coupons, which we get a lot of, okay? So, and I know you guys do too, and if you have any kids going off to college, we'll give them to you, it's fine. All right, so, who wants to go first? Do we have a volunteer for the reasons? Someone, raise your hand because we have mic runners ready to hear your explanations. Be brave, be bold. All right, I see a hand up there. Why?
So our table came up with some of the obvious and some others, including job security focus, the fact that their younger people's values may be, older people's values may be better developed, they know themselves, the financial weight of student loans and other financial or underemployment issues. We also talked a little bit about how the definition may vary depending on what someone assumes reputation means, and we were curious about that piece, and that the answer may be different depending on how it's defined. The youthful optimism, a sense that maybe you could change a company if you were in your 20s and embarking on a new career. And then the point was raised about how younger people may be research challenged and network challenged and just not have that awareness of what a company may be doing, so they're not in a position to make those assessments.
Okay, great. All right, we have someone over there. Go forth, speak.
Sure, good afternoon. Some of ours were the same, but we also realize that when young people come out of college, they have college tuition debt, and then they also have debt for living expenses. So they're going to want to take a job to get started and to gain some experience, and then they may just stay a year or two and then move on to another company. The other is similar to what was said before about they may want to try to change the company, and they can use this as an opportunity to do something really good and then take that with them to another company.
All right, great. So in addition to some of the other things we talked about earlier amongst ourselves in our research group, this issue of student debt and not cynicism, but youthful optimism, that I'm going to go to work for a very large company and with like-minded people, make them more responsible, even if they've had a tarnished issue that has raised in the past. Who else?
Hi, so in addition to the other points that have been mentioned so far, the other two things that we discussed at our table was the possibility that the older generation is less risk averse because they're closer to retirement. And then the other thing that we talked about was the actual phrasing of the question. So the possibility that these are people who could potentially have already shortlisted these companies with bad reputations, and as a result are willing to take job offers from them, versus it's a completely different question as would you shortlist or interview with companies with a bad reputation?
Okay, all right, fair point. The one thing that makes us think that the question actually may be okay, but we're always open to that dialogue, is that 20%, 1 out of 5 said, no, ain't gonna happen, no matter what, not gonna do it. Okay, so what we see in the older cohort, the Gen X and baby boomer cohort, is the response that 2 out of 5 won't do it, so about twice as much. All right, we have time for one more table.
Hi. A couple other, we said a lot of those others, but a couple others where maybe they actually need the skill development, because as you get older in your career, you basically develop the skills, you're moving more laterally into another company. So they maybe need it for the functional side. And then if they're thinking they're going to leave in 1 or 2 years anyway, they get the skills and move on and get a higher salary somewhere else.
Let's hear from one more group, because that issue of tenure has risen a couple of times. Another table.
I took the notes for our group, Elliot, so I'll just speak for us. And one of the points I'm over here by the doors, we came up with was...
First, that Larry is very good at doing surveys. That was your first finding, right?
My first finding, excellent survey, wonderfully written, very, very great results.
Of course.
Anyway, one of the things we came up with is that the younger group are more naive. They don't understand what CR means. They don't understand what the implications can be for working for a company that has a bad reputation.
Interesting. See, that's the one that I thought that has come up before, and I don't believe that's true. I think younger people are much more informed, at least than I was when I came into the workforce. Actually, probably more informed than I am right now, and I'm in the media, okay? Which is sad. I'm waiting for some 19-year-old to kick me out of my job, but they are very well informed. So is it a question of how they perceive what reputation and responsibility are? Okay, please email your responses to research@sharedexpertise.com. Each of the table leaders, we'd love to get these things together as part of a white paper, not necessarily a research study, but just say, hey, we crowdsourced what a lot of people think. From an opinion perspective, this is valuable to us as we study these important issues.